The city began to glitter as twilight rolled over its skyline. Bellerose, an upscale restaurant, glass and gold tucked between mirrored towers, hummed with the low thrum of jazz and conversation. Couples laughed over wine. Waiters glided like shadows across polished floors. At a table in the far corner, set for two, sat Graham Hale. Everything about him whispered control. His silver-gray tie was perfectly centered, his cuffs aligned precisely above a wristwatch that gleamed like a mirror. He didn't check the time out of vanity. For Graham, punctuality was discipline, a small rebellion against chaos. Yet that night, the clock mocked him. 17 minutes past the hour. No call, no message, no arrival. He pressed his lips thin and inhaled through his nose. He hated lateness, not for the inconvenience, but for what it triggered in him. A memory of being 10 years old, sitting on a doorstep long after sunset, waiting for a mother who never came. That old ache had taught him control everything he could. Tonight, for reasons he didn't yet understand, that armor was cracking. He pushed back his chair. The maitre d' noticed, ready to intervene, but Graham lifted a hand. Not now. And then, a small figure darted between the legs of a waiter. Blonde curls, pink shoes, and a rush of determination. She ran straight toward him, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, and tugged at his pant leg with tiny fingers. "My mommy's sorry she's late," she announced, breathless but proud, as though she carried a royal decree. Graham froze. His world of ticking watches and sharp edges blurred for the first time in years. She couldn't have been more than 3. Denim jumper, yellow t-shirt, one sock sliding down. A silver barrette clung desperately to her hair. And those eyes, bright, guileless, impossibly sincere. "I what?" he managed. "She said I should tell you," the girl repeated. Firmer now. "Mommy's really, really sorry." She pointed toward the empty chair across from him. "That's for her, right?" Graham sank back into his seat almost without thinking. Something small and forgotten stirred in him. The echo of that waiting boy, inventing stories about why people were late, why they forgot. He looked down at her. "What's your name?" "Maisie," she said proudly. Before he could respond, a breathless voice called from behind. "Maisie. Honey, wait." A woman hurried into view, blonde hair escaping a low bun, navy dress slightly creased, tote bag heavy on her shoulder. She stopped at the table, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said, gathering the child in her arms. "She insisted on finding you." "I did it, Mommy," Maisie said, beaming. "I told him." The woman laughed softly, then turned to Graham. "Leah Monroe." She extended a hand. He shook it. Her grip was warm, firm, without pretense. "Graham Hale." A flicker crossed her eyes, the flash of recognition. But she said nothing about his name, his wealth, or the headlines attached to it. "Maisie," she said gently, "what do we say for running off?" "Sorry, Mr. Graham," the girl said solemnly. "It's fine," he replied quietly. The maitre d' appeared again, uncertain whether to clear the table. Graham gestured lightly. They were staying. Leah helped Maisie into the booster seat, smoothing her hair before sitting down. Every movement was tender, precise, as if care itself had weight. Graham watched her and felt his irritation dissolve into something softer. For the first time in years, he didn't mind the lost minutes. "I really am sorry," Leah said again, meeting his eyes. "There was a man who collapsed near the subway. I couldn't just walk away." Her tone was simple, unembellished. Graham blinked. He had expected excuses. Traffic, a dead phone, some careless delay. "Not that. Most people don't stop," he said finally. "Most people assume someone else will," she answered. It wasn't pride, only truth. He studied her. No jewelry, no watch, no attempt to impress. Yet there was poise in the way she sat, an ease that didn't come from wealth, but from knowing exactly who she was. "I'm glad you came," he said before he could stop himself. Maisie giggled, waving at a passing waiter. "Mommy makes booze feel better." Leah smiled at her daughter, then turned back to him. "I hope you weren't waiting long." 17 minutes, he admitted. Her eyebrows rose. "That's pretty long." "It's fine," he said, and surprised himself by meaning it. Something about her calm sincerity disarmed him. All his life, every second had been a currency. Tonight, it was just time again. They ordered dinner, grilled cheese for Maisie. I love grilled everything. Seared salmon for Leia, pasta for him. The conversation started cautiously, the polite rhythm of strangers trying to locate common ground. But slowly, the edges softened. Maisie babbled about clouds shaped like elephants. Leia talked about the bookstore where she worked, the smell of paper, the peace of quiet aisles. Graham found himself telling stories he usually kept for investor dinners, only gentler this time, more human. Halfway through the meal, Maisie reached for her juice and tipped it straight into her mother's lap. Leia gasped, fumbling for a napkin. But Graham was faster. From his jacket, he drew a folded white handkerchief and bent forward, dabbing gently at the fabric just above her knee. "Please," she began but stopped. He wasn't awkward or hurried, just careful, respectful. For a moment, everything stilled. "You're not what I expected," she whispered. "Neither are you," he said. Her smile wavered, shy but real. "Most men don't carry handkerchiefs anymore. I'm not most men." "That," she said softly, "is very clear." Maisie, oblivious, nibbled on a breadstick. The tension dissolved into quiet laughter. "Thank you," Leia murmured. "It was nothing," he said, though both of them knew it wasn't. It was something, the smallest gesture that meant safety, care, connection. The rest of the dinner passed in an easy rhythm. Graham forgot about schedules. He just listened. When the check came, Leia reached for her purse. "Please," Graham said, almost amused. "Don't." She met his eyes steadily. "Next time, then." The word next lingered between them like candlelight. Outside, the night air was crisp, the city lights reflecting off damp pavement. Graham instinctively reached for his car keys. "I'll drive you home," he offered. "It's late." Leia shook her head with a soft laugh. "We take the bus." He blinked. "The bus?" "Maisie loves it," she said, brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. "She waves at everyone through the window. It's our little adventure." Maisie grinned. "I get the window seat if no one else needs it." They began walking together toward the stop, Graham falling into step beside them. Maisie skipped ahead, pointing out cracks in the sidewalk and flowers sprouting between them. Leia crouched to admire each one, as if they were treasures. "Do you live far?" he asked. "About 15 minutes by bus. We rent a small place near the library." "You work there?" "At the bookstore across the street," she said. "They let me bring Maisie sometimes." "You must be busy." "I try to be. Bills don't pay themselves." "And Maisie still believes food appears by magic." Graham laughed, an unfamiliar sound on his own lips. "You ever wish you did something else?" he asked. "Sure. Don't we all? But right now this is where I am. It's not bad." There was no bitterness, only acceptance. He studied her profile in the glow of the streetlights. Tired eyes, yes, but full of quiet strength. "You're not bothered by how hard it is?" She looked at him, calm and steady. "Life's hard for everyone. I just try to make sure it doesn't make me hard in return." They reached the bus stop. Wind lifted the hem of her dress. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Kindness," she said softly, "is what I want Maisie to remember. Not how fancy our dinner was." The words landed inside him like truth disguised as a whisper. For a long moment, they stood there in the hush of the street. Then the bus rumbled into view, brakes sighing. Leia turned to him. "Thank you for dinner, Graham." He nodded. "Thank you for showing up." Maisie waved from the bus window as it pulled away, her small hand pressed to the glass. Graham stood on the curb long after the lights disappeared, a man used to closing deals, but suddenly aware he just opened something infinitely rarer, a door. For 3 days after that night, Graham caught himself glancing at his phone between meetings, half expecting a message that never came. His assistant noticed a distraction and made a note to shorten his schedule, assuming he was tired. But he wasn't tired. He was restless. He had spent most of his life believing emotions were liabilities, something to be managed like risk. Yet now, Whenever he looked out his office window at the silver curve of the skyline, he saw a little girl pressing her palm to a bus window and a woman with tired eyes who still smiled like the world was worth the effort. On the fourth day, he finally called the number Leah had written on the back of the receipt. "Bella Books, this is Leah. Do you remember me?" There was a pause, then a small laugh. "You're not that easy to forget, Mr. Hale." He didn't realize until then how much he needed to hear that. "I was wondering," he began carefully, "if you and Maisie might like dinner again, somewhere with less linen and more French fries." Leah hesitated, and he could hear a page turning in the background. "We could do that. Maisie's a strong believer in French fries." Then it settled. That Friday, he met them at a small riverside café with picnic benches instead of chandeliers. Maisie arrived wearing a paper crown she'd made from old wrapping paper. "I'm a princess of the River Kingdom," she declared. "Then I must be your knight," Graham said solemnly, earning a giggle. Leah shook her head, smiling. "You're going to regret encouraging her imagination." "Imagination built everything I own," he replied, and realized too late how it sounded. But Leah only looked at him thoughtfully. "Maybe, or maybe it costs you more than it gives." He didn't answer. They ate under the fading pink sky, the river catching the light like melted copper. When Leah excused herself to take Maisie to the restroom, Graham waited near the water's edge. That was when a man approached him. Sleek suit, camera phone already raised. "Mr. Hale, is it true you're dating a single mom?" the man asked with a smirk. "Your shareholders might find that unconventional." Graham's jaw tightened. "Turn that off." "Come on, just a quote." "I set off." His voice cut like steel. The man backed off, but not before the shutter clicked. By Monday morning, the photo was everywhere. Billionaire bachelor's mystery date. Single mom and child identified. Leah called him first. "Is this your idea of privacy?" Her voice trembled, more tired than angry. "I didn't invite that," he said, but it sounded hollow even to him. "I have to live here, Graham. I can't hide behind bodyguards." "I'll fix it," he promised. "I'll make them take it down." She sighed. "You can't fix everything with money." Then she hung up. The next evening, he drove to the bookstore. Through the window, he saw her shelving returns while Maisie sat behind the counter coloring rabbits and stars. He stood outside for a long time, afraid to make it worse. Finally, he walked in. The little bell above the door chimed. Leah turned. Her expression softened, but she didn't speak. "I came to apologize," he said quietly. "I should have protected you better." She set a book aside. "You don't have to keep proving you're the hero, Graham. Sometimes people just want someone to stand with them, not for them." The word struck deeper than she knew. He'd spent a lifetime standing alone, mistaking solitude for strength. "Then let me stand with you," he said. For the first time, she smiled again. "You can start by helping Maisie find the purple crayon she lost somewhere in Narnia." "On it," he said, and dropped to his knees beside a giggling child and a mountain of books. From that evening on, Graham became a quiet fixture in their small world. He read bedtime stories when Leah worked late, brought boxes of unsold books from his publishing division for the store's community shelf, and learned that happiness could live in places with flickering light bulbs and chipped mugs. He still returned to his glass tower every morning, but now he noticed how cold the marble floors felt beneath his shoes. Weeks passed. The scandal faded. The photo was buried under fresher gossip. What didn't fade was a habit of dinner at the River Café and mornings at the bookstore. One Saturday, Maisie tugged him by the hand into the park near their apartment. The sidewalk was covered in chalk drawings, flowers, suns, crooked houses. She stopped beside one particular picture, 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow heart. "That's you, me, and Mommy," she said proudly. Graham crouched beside her. "I thought your daddy drew hearts like that." She shook her head. "I don't have a daddy. But Mommy says some people come later, and that's okay." Leah watched from the bench, her eyes glistening. That night, after putting Maisie to bed, they stood together by the small balcony overlooking the city lights. "I keep thinking about that picture," he said softly. "The one with the heart." "She draws everyone she loves that way," Leah whispered. Then I'm honored. She turned toward him, and for a moment, all the noise of the city fell away. You don't have to keep being careful, Graham, she said. We're not waiting for you to save us. I know, he said. Maybe I just want to learn what it feels like to belong somewhere. Her hand found his. Then stop looking. You're already here. Months later, Bellerose reopened under new ownership, and Graham took Leia there for dinner. Just the two of them this time. The same corner table, the same soft jazz, but no untouched glass of wine waiting alone. When the maitre d' recognized him and asked whether he wanted the table set for 2 or 3, Leia laughed. 3, she said, nodding toward the door where Maisie peeked in, clutching her ever-faithful stuffed rabbit. She's part of the deal. Graham smiled, the kind of smile that reached the places money never could. As the waiter poured the wine, Maisie climbed onto her chair, spreading her crayons across the linen. I'm going to draw us again, she announced. Another family portrait? Graham asked. No, she said, tongue between her teeth as she sketched. This time it's a forever one. He watched her draw the same 3 figures under the same yellow heart. Only this time, she added a 4th shape, small, just beginning to form beside Leia's figure. What's that? He asked. Maisie giggled. You'll see. Mommy says surprises take time. Leia flushed, laughing through sudden tears. Graham reached across the table, and she took his hand without hesitation. The restaurant lights glowed like stars through glass, and somewhere between laughter and silence, he realized that the waiting boy inside him had finally been met, not by perfection, but by love that simply showed up.